Dr. Seema Kanwal is a naturopathic doctor with many years of experience, and we benefit from that, and we have before. Seema has spoken at our meetings before, so we're very lucky to have her. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. It's so funny, having grown up with all that cooking, I have no appreciation for it. My kids, if they want Indian food, I'm like, go to grandma's house. I'm not cooking it for you. So it's so lovely. My mother would be happy to hear somebody actually did that here. All right, so I'm going to talk about the nutrition piece, of course, as well as supplementary stuff that I get asked a lot with Pompe patients. There's two really quick research articles that I'll just really run through fast that really highlighted the importance of figuring out the exercise piece and the nutrition piece so that we can respond to enzyme replacement therapy more efficiently. So really, when we look at this as a whole, there's no one size fits all, of course, with anybody, any individual person. It's really looking at this as a whole piece and seeing how can I actually do better. It's just between you and you, not between you and another person, another table. It has nothing to do with that. It's like just looking at your own self and it's like, okay, what can I do that will potentially allow me to take this medication that's saving my life that can work better. That's how I want you to go into this with. Okay, so the first study looked at what does the body actually need and how can it actually perform the best. So it looked at people who were responders and non-responders to enzyme replacement therapy. And the biggest key predictor was their baseline functional status testing, so the 6-minute walk test that they looked at. And they noticed that responders to enzyme replacement walked anywhere from 344 meters before enzyme replacement, while non-responders averaged about 238 meters. So really, what this study tried to show us was that the stronger the patients were going in, the better their chance of actually maintaining or improving their own function. Another factor that they looked at was the regular diet and exercise that correlated with them and how their lifestyle actually mattered. So when we look at the role of enzyme replacement therapy, nothing's going to replace it, and we don't want to replace it. But the study showed that exercise and diet can actually be very, very supportive in how the body can actually maximize your results when you're actually using enzyme replacement therapy. The challenge, though, that often patients will ask me about is, how do I maintain this high protein diet? Sometimes I don't want to eat this, I'm tired of it, and satiation, like I don't really necessarily feel satisfied. And one of the key messages really was the lifestyle support, you want it to be additive, and I don't want it to be stressful. So if there's a day you're just having a hard time, we just learned about batch cooking, having that ready to go in the freezer can make the world of difference. So that days that you're just too tired and you don't feel like it, take something out of the freezer and you don't have to worry about it. Now, the biggest outcome for this one was that the stabilization, improvement in function, as well as the respiratory measures, is what they really saw was a big one. But really, at the end of this, like so many other studies, they often will say that we really need more control trials and blah, blah, blah. We all know this already. On to the next study. I'm really going to whip right through these. This next study I actually really liked, and it is a great resource for everybody. Everybody will have access to all of this anyway. They recommended having a profile of about 20 to 25% protein, 30% carbohydrate, and about 35 to 40% fat intake. So we all know why Pompe is here. So it's caused by the deficiency in the acid alpha glucosides, and that enzyme breaks down glycogen in the lysosome. So when you are trying to limit glycogen storage, you decrease that amount of glycogen being produced from your carbohydrate. And so the less substrate you have to accumulate in the muscle cell itself. So less carbohydrate, less glycogen storage, which ultimately hopefully then leads to slower progression and damage, which really then helps reduce the burden. That's the biggest issue with this and how to really maintain that lower carbohydrate. So in this study, they also looked at a couple of different supplements. I'm going to go into this a bit more detail a little bit later. But the supplementary itself that they looked at, have people heard of this? Alanine, potentially? Oh, yes, perfect. So alanine, they've explored in Pompe because it can really serve as an alternate energy stabilizer for the muscle. So some have suggested about the nitrogen balance and the muscle function improvement that they've seen with alanine. I don't really like to break out branched-chain amino acids separately. I think it's just based on just biochemistry and physiology and how your muscles will use amino acids. I prefer the full complete versus taking things individually. But in this particular study, they looked at this as an individual unit. Multivitamin is often a big one as well. We already know in Pompe there's a huge nutrition gap that often can occur. So with a multi, it can really help bridge those gaps. So we'll go into a little bit more detail about what to look for in a multivitamin in a bit. And bone health is also really critical. And we know this because with reduced mobility and potentially inflammation, another big component is actually hormone. Hormone function is something that often gets overlooked in rare genetic diseases as a general whole. If you have this disease, this is what we're going to focus on. You have this disease, this is what we're focusing on. But when you look at bone mineral density, what actually conducts this? Yes, absolutely, calcium is important, but what is going to help calcium absorb is actually vitamin D. But vitamin D should not be called a vitamin, it's actually a prohormone. You have enough cholesterol, you have enough vitamin D, then that is going to then take that calcium that you're going to be taking and actually absorbing into the bones themselves. So taking things individually with Pompe, you have to be very careful with. So I usually will suggest if you are taking vitamin D and calcium, keep the D in the morning, keep the calcium in the evening. And calcium and magnesium will then help absorb the D. So it's this whole cascade effect that'll end up happening. And depending where you are in your hormonal years, if you are in your 40s, whether you're a man or a woman, what ends up happening is potentially decrease in various different hormones. So for women, often it's that estrogen, that progesterone that'll end up declining. And what mitigates that and absorbing that is actually estrogen that's going to support the bones. And for men, it's that testosterone and DHEA. In your 40s, potentially, mid-40s, 50s, what happens with men often is that testosterone will tend to decline. And DHEA is your mitigator for bone health. In Pompe disease, I was having a really tough time in finding studies on hormones in Pompe, but hopefully that's going to come in the future. Now, for the conclusion of this particular study, they found that the best results came when your diet and exercise were combined, which we hear regularly. When you have a higher protein diet plus aerobic exercise, you can really improve your VO2 max. And VO2 max is something that's really looked at when it comes to longevity. There's a lot of push now these days for longevity, and these are the pills that you want to take to enhance your lifespan and all that kind of fun stuff, right? But really it's the aerobic capacity that one actually has. And in this particular study, they looked at enzyme replacement therapy, high protein, and exercise was the most effective approach for long-term outcomes. Now, everybody has a handout that has a little bit of an idea of breakfast, lunches, and dinners, and just more of a little summary of the important stuff. So I'm not necessarily going to go through every slide. I'd rather this be a little bit more interactive. You guys can all read what I've given you. I don't need to read the slides. But just some ideas just to help you. Like, what does that even look like? What does a high protein, low carbohydrate even mean? So these examples that I've given you are just some ideas that you can try implementing, and hopefully easy to cook. Like eggs are probably one of the easiest things to make and does not take long. And if dinner sometimes you don't feel like cooking, eggs are a great thing to throw on into the griddle and throw in some vegetables in there to get your veggies. Smoothies, another great option, but lots of ideas this is all stuff that all of you already have. So I'm going to jump right to the supplement part, because that, I think, is one that I get asked a lot. Anybody wants to throw in questions too? Feel free. Okay,
I think a good thing to talk about, maybe just while you're on this slide, is snacks.
sure.
We talk about meals all the time, and we don't talk about snacks.
Snacks are fun because with blood sugars stabilization as well, we want to look at, this is a very individual thing. So if you're getting your regular blood work done, and if you happen to be either close to diabetes, or if you happen to have any type of blood sugar dysregulation, having good quality snacks around is something that's going to be very beneficial for blood sugar in the long run. So what are some of the things that people tend to gravitate towards? I like to say, try to have enough of hours in between your 3 meals that you're gonna have that period of time of fasting, so that your body has the chance to go through and actually use up all the food that you just had. But let's say you're hungry, and especially between lunches and dinners, those tend to be the longer hours. So in between lunch and dinner, what are some of the options? You want to have something that's a little bit higher protein and potentially a good healthy fat. So having hard-boiled eggs around it can be very helpful, so that you can quickly grab it and go. Handfuls of nuts. Nuts sometimes can be a little bit challenging for some people's digestive system. So one of the rules of thumb with nuts is you see how does your body do. And if your body has a little bit of harder time digesting nuts, soak them. Soaking them overnight, you activate that enzyme, and then your body's able to actually break it down a lot better and then absorb the protein from that nut. Using, like Brad was saying, hemp seeds. Hemp seeds are a great option that you literally can throw it on anything. If you're making a smoothie, you can put it in there. If you're making some eggs, you can put that in there. You adding in 2 tablespoons of hemp seed will add an extra anywhere from 5 to 10 grams of protein easily. Having protein shakes as a snack, cheese slices, if you're not don't have any problems with dairy. Those are always great protein options as well. Okay, so the way I split up the supplements was looking at energy builders and then energy protectors. And that's all written down for you guys as well. So some of the top questions that I get asked are creatine. Creatine has become so popular now in the last, I'd say probably 2 years. Back from when I first started, creatine used to be just one of those things for bodybuilders, and nobody else, was supposed to touch it because then you'd get too big. Well, we all know that's all hogwash. It's not actually how it works. Creatine is one of those really most well-researched supplement out there to date. And creatine, you still do have to watch your kidney function. As long as your kidney function is still relatively good, it's the amount of creatine that actually matters and the form of creatine. You always want to find the micronized creatine. Micronized creatine means that it's gonna cause less disruption in your own gut. So where I find the most problems is when somebody starts on creatine and they think, oh, I read I'm supposed to do 30 grams, I'm gonna do 30 grams today. And then their gut is in complete pain for a long time. So the best thing to do with creatine when you're first starting at it is start with lower dosages. So 2.5, usually a scoop when you buy it as a powder, it's usually about 5 grams. Always start low, go slow, and then you can slowly work your way up. I've often found with Pompe though, past 5 grams is really unnecessary. That little bit goes a long way to really be supportive in your own muscles. Arginine is phenomenal when it comes to circulation as well as metabolism for really helping with that energy production in the cell itself. Now, carnitine really needs to be spoken of with CoQ10. So the reason for these is if you think about your muscles themselves, they are full of mitochondria. What is mitochondria? Is supposed to help us give our energy. So think of coenzyme Q10 as the ignition switch, carnitine as the shuttle. You take this together, that's what really helps to protect your muscle, but also help your muscles make the energy that it actually needs to make. So when we take these things together, that's when they work ideal for you. The trick with taking coenzyme Q10 and carnitine is that coenzyme Q10 is a fat. So anytime you take that supplement, it does need to be taken with a fat. So what does a fat look like? It could be a spoon of olive oil, could be a little bit of avocado, or even a couple of nuts. Anything that has a bit of fat in it will help your body absorb the CoQ10 that you'll take. I get asked often about fish oils. Fish oils, especially in those age ranges of where hormones are starting to change, fish oils not only help with inflammation, but they really help to stabilize and balance hormones as well, especially for females when you're going through that period of time where potentially perimenopause is hitting or now postmenopausal is hitting, and you have a lot of mood disruptions that, if you're really tired from just having Pompe and then all of a sudden your hormones are going a little bit funky on you as well, there can be a lot of mood instability. You're angry and you're happy all at once, and you don't know which one to choose in that moment. This is where I find fish oils to be really helpful in helping to stabilize hormones, but the flip side of it is it really helps to stabilize inflammation as well. And vitamin D. So vitamin D has an inverse relationship to melatonin. What does that mean? That means it'll actually really help with if you have any type of sleep disruption. But vitamin D is a hormone, and vitamin D really should be taken in the morning. But if you're somebody who maybe gets blood tests or maybe you don't, like really depends where you live. Some doctors will be able to do blood tests to check your levels of vitamin D for you, some will not. So depending on you, the dosage does end up mattering. Ideally, timing-wise though, vitamin D taken in the morning with some type of fat. So any breakfast that you have, throw in a little bit of fat when you are taking vitamin D. That will ensure that your body's going to be able to absorb it the best. And then, especially if you are somebody who has low bone mineral density and you've been told to take calcium, so then calcium should be taken at the end of the day with your dinner. And the reason being, when you're going to go to bed at night, ideally when you're sleeping, growth hormone gets secreted. Growth hormone gets secreted, that calcium now is going to get shunted right into the bone. Make sense? Great, so timing sometimes does matter with certain nutrients. And now proteins and amino acids. So there is a lot of different types of protein powders on the market, all these stuff that's on the market. What I often caution people with though is the gut. If you're somebody who has a more sensitive gut, you want to be careful on what type of protein you're actually getting. So for Pompe, yes, we absolutely need protein, but you also want to be mindful of the quality of that. So if you're somebody who's not sensitive to whey protein from an isolate can be very helpful. For some people, I find collagen is very helpful, where it's 1 scoop is 10 grams, and you can add that into your coffee or into your tea, or just drink it in good old water. Any which ways can be very helpful to add that in. Plant proteins are also very superior, but for some, it can actually be something that can actually lack essential nutrients. So that recipe that we just learned about, that's actually a great way to incorporate a complete plant protein, because our lentils, our legumes often are something that's overlooked. And if, certain individuals, like my husband, for example, if I don't have meat on that table, it's considered I'm not having dinner yet. This is a little ridiculous. But plant proteins actually are full of especially lentils themselves, are full of all the essential requirements that we actually have. Now, multivitamins I want to talk about, because multivitamins often are something that can be really helpful to bridge those gaps in Pompe when it comes to energy levels, when it comes to just ensuring that you're getting what you need. But there's certain things to be really careful of when it comes to multivitamins. What I have found for Pompe is try to avoid tablets. When you look at a tablet, you want to look at the other ingredients. The other ingredients are usually, they'll be on the label of your multivitamin, and it's going to tell you what else is in there that's not the multi. So oftentimes these tablets have to be made a certain size. And that certain size means there has to be binders and fillers that are associated with this tablet. And Pompe, you can have a harder time breaking this down to begin with. So what I find that works best is a capsule form. That capsule, as long as it's a vegetarian capsule, your body will tend to break it down more efficiently. And also when you're looking at multivitamins, take a look at what the individual sources are. For Pompe, you want those to be activated. So what does that mean? So if you have something that says, for example, folic acid, You really do not want something that says folic acid. Instead, you want something that's the activated version, which is 5-MTHF, which will stand for 5-methyl tetrahydrofolate. My memory serves me correctly. And B vitamins. B vitamins can be very helpful for Pompe with giving energy. So with B vitamins, in a multivitamin, you want to look for more that's activated form. Okay? All of those, it's all listed there for you as well. And for some patients, I find the one a day doesn't necessarily work because it's really taken as what does the rest of your day look like when it comes to food? What are you actually having? What does your breakfast look like? What does your lunch look like? What does your dinner look like? And for some, one is absolutely sufficient. And for some people, maybe you need 2, maybe you need 3. It really depends on you. That's why I always say, let's look at the individual first and to determine what is the right dosing for you. So looking at this as a whole, really trying to balance as best as you can your own diet, whatever that looks like for you. And what is your meal timing like? What is your activity like? What does therapy look like for you? What are your doctor's appointments look like for you? All these things can be really challenging. So trying to get sometimes a proper meal intake in for those days can be really tough. So try to do whatever you can to make things easy for you, whether that means looking at making a smoothie for the trip to whatever doctor's appointment you end up having to go to. Hydration is another big one that we often overlook. So how much water should we actually be drinking? So really quick calculation you can do for yourself is you take your own body weight, divided by 2, make sure it's in pounds, that will equal to the number of ounces for you. So this whole 8 glasses a day, sometimes, yes, that works out to 8 glasses a day for everybody, but that's not for the majority. For some, it's actually less. And for some, it's way more. Again, based on body weight. You can do your own calculation. Take your body weight in pounds divided by 2 equals to the number of ounces that you individually need. Easy calculation to do. Okay, and that's pretty much it. Questions? Come on, Brad.
I know
you
I have a
question.
So I'm wondering if you could give us a source or like a website or something that we could go to when we hear about a vitamin or a supplement. We don't know what it is. That would be really helpful. The other thing I'm also wondering is there are good and not so good sources of supplements. Are there any that all I do is I try to look for Canadian ones. That's all I think is better, but I have no idea really.
Yes, so on everybody's sheet that I've given them at the bottom, I've created an actual supplement list for Pompe, and everybody will have access. So these are the brands that I often refer to for Pompe patients that if you look at the extra labels that are on there, they are Canadian, which is very hard to find these days, that are just Canadian and not the US counterparts, but they're also very clean. So everyone's got access to that as well. It's all on the handout. But there are certain brands out there that are very good. Some of the Canadian brands are things like NFH. They're actually from Quebec. Cytomatrix is from Ottawa. So these are great brands that often you can go to your health food store with, that they will carry that. Thorne is one of the cleanest brands, but they are US. They have a great multi, that's an AM and a PM, but it's a US brand. If you're okay with that, Thorne's great. Very clean. They don't have any binders, any fillers, none of that good stuff.
I think in the past that there was some reason why Canadian supplements were better quality. I seem to remember. Was I mistaken?
No, that's...
No?
No.
Okay.
Were you thinking maybe in the creatine to avoid some of the creatine from China that was discolored?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what I was thinking.
Yeah.
It's too
I
long ago.
think there was something in terms of creatine where you were getting your sources of creatine that you don't want it discolored.
100%. It's a white powder. You want to leave it like that. Really the key for supplementary stuff is look at the source, and every bottle will tell you where the source is from. And yes, you definitely want to avoid things like that are potentially not, or that are outside of North America. And also the extra label, that on every nutrient bottle that you purchase, Costco, wherever, you're gonna see the list of this is what the supplement facts are. But underneath that, in smaller writing, is the other ingredients. That's what's really important for Pompe. You want to avoid things like mag stearate. You want to avoid things that are the binder, the filler that are put in, because what does that mean? That means that your body now has to break that, your liver has to now break that part of it down before it actually gets to the nutrient. So taking things that are capsule format, that are often powders, is much easier, and they often have less of the excipients that are added into it. And that actually goes for also just food in the grocery store. Nowadays, everyone's using almond milk or soy milk or oat milk, these other so-called healthier options out there. But when we look at the actual label of something that's now sitting on the shelf, why is the expiry date a little bit later? So what I teach is take a look at what is the label on that almond milk or whatever it is that you're using. So one thing we discovered, I work a lot with Fabry disease as well. One thing we discovered is that carrageenan for Fabry patients doesn't work at all. And in Pompe, I haven't seen that direct correlation yet with carrageenan, but carrageenan is something that comes from seaweed. So it's not that seaweed's bad for you, seaweed's wonderful, but carrageenan's purpose is to prolong the shelf life. So it can make something go from 1 month expiry to 2-year expiry. So when I see something like carrageenan on a label, like if you're buying almond milk or oat milk, any of those alternative milks, you want to watch out for something that says carrageenan on it. Just don't bother buying it. There's a few really good brands out there that actually don't have that. Usually the ones in the fridge that are in the fridge versus the ones sitting on the shelf tend to be better. So look for those. Elmhurst is another brand that is a US brand, I'm sorry, but it's so clean. It doesn't have anything in it, but if you're buying, let's say, almond milk, it just has almond, salt, and water. That's it. I'm not attached to any brand, by the way. Yes.
I was just curious. On the B vitamin thing.
Yes.
Because I know, like I used to take a B vitamin, B50 complex multivitamin when I was younger, actually before I was diagnosed and everything like that. And what I was curious, because I've been wondering about the B vitamin thing, because I know that it helps with the metabolizing of fats, carbohydrates, and proteins into energy. But what my concerns have been about it is, would that in Pompe patients not, like, is that something we need to worry about? I'm trying to phrase this right. Because yes, it helps with the fats and the proteins, but it also, would it increase the production of glycogen because it helps with that metabolizing of carbohydrates? Like, is that something we should, would that be a concern for Pompe?
No, it wouldn't be, and the reason being, No, it wouldn't be, and the reason being, when you're looking at all of our physiological pathways, your Krebs cycle, what does mitochondria do? Mitochondria is going to be the garbage pickup day. So every night, it's critical that you're sleeping. So what happens is your lymphatic system in the brain has to now empty out all that garbage. All these processes require B6, folic acid, B12, B2. All these are precursors to all of that. So no, it would not be something that is going to affect the glycogen storage. If anything, it's going to help empty out everything more efficiently.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I was just worried about
the only key would be, though, is you don't take it at night, because then you will have energy. And at nighttime, you want to go to sleep. Really, it's better to have it during the day. But the other thing with bees also is there's a lot of push these days for methylated versions. Now, I do a lot of work with genetic as it is, not just, one gene that is an issue with people. It's like what other genes are there that are potentially impacting this individual person. So there's a big push on social media, I'm sure we've heard of Gary Brecka. Everyone should be on methylated bees. It doesn't work that way with everybody. For some people, if you do take a methylated bee, they can experience anxiety. You know, we were talking about depression earlier, we're talking about mental health earlier. You want to be cognizant of your own body. How do you actually feel when you take a bee that is methylated? All methylated means is that it's activated. What I've noticed with certain individual Pompe patients is that they do better with a hydroxyl or adenosine version of a B vitamin, as opposed to the methylated version. So often we're told that methylated is better. Yes, it can be, but you want to be aware of you. If you take a methylated B, what happens to you? Do you feel more anxious? Do you not? Do you know, how do you feel? So on that list that everybody has access to, I've put in a few different multis in there. One of them does not have the methylated B. It's the Pure Genomics brand. And the other ones do have methylated B. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
A little tangent there about the methylation.
We have a question from online.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, so we have a parent of a 3.5-month-old with IOPD, and they're asking when would be a good time to introduce supplements and which ones would you recommend?
So for children, you want to wait until they are at least eating food. So usually around 6 months is when kids will start eating. But I don't normally like to give supplements until they're about 18 months to 2 years. It honestly just depends on the child. For some kids, usually around a year, but again, it depends on what's the growth. This is a bigger question because it's so individual. Some kids, you have to check their iron. Do they need extra iron for their growth? Do some kids need fish oils? It really is dependent on the child, but I don't like to introduce supplements usually for kids too quickly. Because everything else has to matter too, like the food that they're eating or not eating, or are they picky, are they not picky? What other questions? Oils, do you want to know about oils, what oil to use? Sometimes that's a question.
I love the graphics, by the way.
It's my 22-year-old son who thought I should have a dancing chicken.
A lot of these supplements can get quite expensive, especially if you look at this whole list. Do you recommend, do you recommend trying some, see if you notice a difference, and then if you don't, go off of them, or like going on all of them? How do you sort of pick and choose what someone should do or not do, sort of keeping in mind the expense of all of them?
How do I take that is the individual. So what is the primary goal? Are they lacking energy? Are they eating really well, but maybe they just want that little extra little bit? So I usually suggest something like a multi, see how you feel. If you take a nutrient and you haven't noticed a difference within 2 to 3 weeks, it's probably not the right one for you. Just like medications, vitamins can be very important, but to take something for the sake of taking it, complete waste of money. Absolutely. So I usually will say you give something a fair shot, about 2 to 4 weeks. You notice a good change, great, it's obviously working for you. But if it's not, scrap it, on to the next. Don't even bother. Because if you're taking the right thing, you will absolutely notice a positive change. And if you're not, that means we've missed something.
Yeah, thanks for your talk. The only thing I would add to that is you're not going to notice, and what I would actually suggest, especially living in Canada, northern climate, would be vitamin D. I mean, you're not going to necessarily notice, in my opinion, a great boost in energy, but there is certainly so much evidence to say for bone health, as you mentioned, for immune health.
Hormone health,
yeah.
Absolutely.
So I mean, I don't think you're necessarily going to see I feel much better, but that would be one I think there's
Vitamin
probably.
D is not part of that group of
Okay.
feeling good. It's
Okay.
more the multivitamin,
Okay,
the
perfect.
coenzyme Q10, like the more mitochondrial support.
Yeah. Yes.
Those can be, definitely you should be able to see a difference. Vitamin D, if you live here in good old BC, you need vitamin
It's
D.
good to take it.
This
And I
is
guess,
pretty standard, just gray.
and just wonder, have you heard, because we used to be big on, so we work with the mitochondrial disease patients as well, and so we have our whole sort of triangle of how you add on, and because of the costs and stuff. But we used to be big on carnitine, and then we've really pulled away of that. I'm not sure if you've come across that at all, because there were quite a few studies that did show certainly in animal models at least, that some of the metabolites of carnitine, when it wasn't just a definite carnitine deficiency, that's completely different, but just as a supplement, some of the metabolites would be a bit atherosclerotic. So we actually pulled back, and most people have not suggested that unless they're shown to be carnitine deficient. I don't know if you've come across that, 'cause equivalent to smoking.
Yeah, exactly. So with carnitine, that's why I made that comment that you want to take it with coenzyme Q10. So what you find in studies now is that when you take to really support that mitochondria, you need to do both, because CoQ10 is your starting point. Carnitine can be your shuttle, but then that's where thyroid also has to be monitored, because for some patients they've seen where carnitine will actually downregulate thyroid, which is fine if you're hyper, but not fine if you're hypo. So medications have a big role to play. What other medications are you taking? So mitochondrial supplements is something that you do need to be monitoring, making sure that labs are nice and healthy and normal and whatever else is going on. But carnitine as a standalone, it can really upregulate also your metabolic rate. So if you're somebody that doesn't need to lose weight, you got to be careful how much of the carnitine you're even taking, because that can really rev up the metabolism. And for some, it can cause heart palpitations. It can cause anything. Just talk to somebody first before you start dabbling into these fun little supplement world.
One follow-up question on the vitamin D.
Yeah.
How much vitamin D do you usually recommend people take? Because that can be a question.
I do lab testing for that, because some patients I have found, like since the pandemic, people were way overtaking it. I mean, and now in British Columbia, the reference range has actually changed as of this summer. It used to be 75 to 250. It's now 50 to 125. So the allotment has shifted. So depending on the blood work, 1,000 is usually pretty good. But for some patients, I've had to take them off completely because they were overdosing, and some patients are not taking enough. So I take them anywhere from 3,000 to 4,000, but I redo their labs, within 4 to 5 months to make sure that, okay, are they actually building or are they not? So standard average person, 1 to 2,000 is great every morning, not at night.
Yeah, I think sometimes we would have people coming in with like 10,000 units a day of vitamin D.
Yes.
And I think, yeah.
Exactly my point. I've had patients that we've done blood work and they're like at 300, 400. I'm like, what are you doing? Are you bathing in vitamin D? Stop taking it.
Yeah,
Need a break.
It's an interesting, different approach, because I think for how we often learn for prescribing, like the test to order for vitamin D is like $60, but then a tab, like 1,000 units of vitamin D costs about 10 cents. So, so we often just kind of say 1 to 2,000 units. Probably it won't be too much, but it's just interesting to hear the different kind of approaches.
Yeah, so if cost is an issue, then I usually then don't test it that often, but November and February would be the 2 times that I will usually then check it, and then to really just get a good gauge on, okay, so this is what's safe, then maybe let's maintain this amount for you for this length of time. And then summer times, especially if you're going out to Mexico or, we have summers here, take a break. It's fat soluble. We all need a break from fat soluble.
I have a follow-up question to that question. This is more of like a labeling thing, I think, but what's the difference between vitamin D and D3? And because D3 usually accommodate or usually go together with calcium on the label.
So D3 is the activated form. So our body will, from our skin, has to convert from D2 into D3. So D3, there's no conversion involved.
Okay, so
It's activated.
So would you say D3 is always better if that's the option compared to just?
Yeah, because D2, it can be tougher on certain people's kidneys, that they're not going to be able to do the conversion.
I see. Okay.
So D3 is what you want.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, everybody.